Right. So we've been talking about this idea of bringing peak performance into every area of our life, without any kind of sacrifice. And I'm super excited, super inspired by my next guest, Solay Rad. So welcome, Solay.
Thank you.
So I just want to. My first question to you is, and I would imagine there have been a multitude of iterations, but who were you before the you that you are now?
Wow. That's a great question. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm so excited to be here and to share with you on what you are creating. I know it's magnificent. And the old Solay Rad, well, hardworking, dedicated, ambitious, money driven, wanting success, trying to help everybody he can help, and oftentimes forgetting about what's really important in life. That's how I would describe the old self.
So what are those? What in your eyes would be those most important things that you were forgetting about?
Most important things that I was forgetting there were things that were really important in life, especially for men. Really having a connection with my emotional self, not avoiding my traumas, having a connection with money and wealth that is healthy and based on purpose instead of constantly trying to make money, pay the bills, buy the cars, buy the houses, which is what we're all told to do, right? We all grow up on television, which is produced in Hollywood mostly. And Hollywood television tells us the same thing: go out there, work hard, make a lot of money, get a lot of women, and you'll be just as happy as everybody on TV. And we know
Mm.
that the reality is completely different. And so many men around the world are awakening to that, especially because we're in a time that's more prosperous than any generation before. Listen, I know that we're in a recessionary period, and I know that a lot of people are struggling. They're out of jobs. They're not making as much money. But with that still said, we're still in a better place than we were 50, 100, 200 years ago financially. And so as a lot more men start to have access to money, start to have access to fame, Instagram, women, more and more of them are waking up and saying, wait a second, this isn't that fulfilling. This is pretty empty. And I was tricked.
Absolutely, absolutely. Would you? So, how would you define? How would have you defined success then versus now?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you a quick rendition of my story. I was
This.
born in Iran during a time of war. So I spent the first 8 years of my life going in and out of bomb shelters. At the time, I didn't think much of it. I thought that's how the world works. I'd never seen anything different. But all around me, people were dying and homes were being destroyed, and there was a lot of impoverishment. And after about 8 years, my parents decided that they wanted to leave the country as war refugees, and we immigrated to Los Angeles. When we got here, I didn't speak English. I didn't understand the culture. I didn't have any friends. I had no money. And it was like being an alien in a completely new country. Imagine if I took you and your family and dropped you off in a African country tomorrow and you didn't speak the language, didn't have any money. So one day I was watching a show that nearly changed my life. I would say it ruined my life. See if you can guess the name of the show. It was a show in the 90s and it had to do with bikinis on the beach. What's the name of the show?
I'm guessing Baywatch.
Baywatch, right? So you're a 90s kid just like me. And
Yeah.
like many of our viewers, I watched this show and it changed my life. I looked at these people on TV and I was like, wow, gorgeous women, all this money, cars. These people look happy. Maybe if I do what they're doing, I'll be just as happy as them. Maybe if I get as much women and as much money as they do, I'll be just as fulfilled as they are on TV.
Mm.
And unfortunately, that's much of what most men get programmed with. They assume that if they work hard, make a lot of money, get a lot of beautiful women around them, they'll be super happy. So I started work early, went to work at the age of 12, and by the age of 20, I was still struggling. And I started to crash personal development events. I would take my dad's suit and I would sneak into Tony Robbins events and all these different business conferences, and I would take notes on how men and women were behaving, people who were successful.
Mm.
After a while, I started to understand how things worked, but I still didn't have any money or any women around me. And one day, I had this crazy idea to crash parties at the Playboy Mansion here in Hollywood. Crazy, right?
Wow.
So, so I remember the first time I snuck into the Playboy Mansion, and I was so scared and so excited. I was around some of the world's most beautiful women. And in that place, I was happy, and I spent many, many, many nights at that place because I started getting invited back. But I was checking in with myself, and I'm like, wait a second, this is what most guys want. This is what I was told would make me happy. I am happy, but I'm so not fulfilled. Like, this is it? And I
Mhm.
thought, well, maybe it's because I'm not a millionaire yet. Maybe it's if I have more money, I will be more happy. So I started a career in finance, became a financial advisor, worked super hard for 8 years. I'm talking about like 60-hour weeks. And by the age of 33, I had my own financial advisory company. I was making $1 million of personal income, managing $100 million of people's money. And I can't tell you how wealthy I was and how emotionally broke I was. And
Mm.
again, I was surprised. I was like, what? All this money, the cars, the houses, the employees. And am I happy? Yeah, kind of happy. You know, how could you not be happy? But I'm not fulfilled. Is this what life is about? And I'm sure you see that all the time, right, Lee?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm imagining that emotionally broke is equal to unfulfillment.
Yeah. So,
So, what would you share to somebody who's in that same kind of situation, or maybe is has not even reached that pinnacle yet, in terms of money and women, but they're still, I gotta push, I gotta stick this out, even though it's a job that I, despise. I've got a family now, and I've got these things. I'm kind of stuck. I hate what I'm doing, but I just have to continue on. You know, more so for my family than anything else. What would you say to someone in that position of first being able to identify that they're in that situation and that maybe something needs to change, and then what maybe one or two steps could they actually take to move towards that change?
yeah, thank you so much for bringing that up. And that's so, so relevant for most men, especially in America. And it's very easy for somebody like me to come up here and say, well, if you're in that situation, just get some coaching and stop doing that. But it's really hard. I was in that position myself. I was in a position where I had worked years to build infrastructure to support and provide for other people in my life. And to just suddenly change is really difficult. Actually, it might even be
Mhm.
unhealthy. So, what I always recommend with men is number one thing is healthy brotherhood. The five guys you hang out with determine your lifestyle. So if you're hanging out with men who are talking about, excuse my language, if they're talking about women as bitches, if they're talking about money just so that they can pay their wife or pay their kids' school and they could then retire, if they're going out at night drinking and watching sports and eating unhealthy and living day to day, honest to God, you need some new friends. And this has been it's literally like one of the biggest philosophies for health in our lives, in every part of our life. Who you hang out with determines your results. So the first thing is find some new friends, join a workshop, go somewhere you've never gone before. And when you start to open your consciousness to men who are unlike you, but for some reason they say they feel fulfilled, maybe there's something you can learn there. maybe there's just a little
Mm.
thing you can do differently in your life that will make a huge result in how you live, how you show up for your family. That's the first step of it. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I would love for you to go into, because again, I'm imagining that the amount of success that you enjoyed is beyond what most people even dream of, but then you you talk about still being unfulfilled at that point. So what was maybe the one or two biggest perceived obstacles at the time that you identified, and then how were you able to overcome them?
Yeah, thank you for asking such insightful questions. So, the first thing is there's nothing wrong with making money. You don't have to be a hippie to be happy, right? So, go after wealth. I'm still going after wealth. I still have multiple businesses going. But there's an old mindset for most men that has been given to them from their fathers. And that's a mindset of financial success through pain and suffering.
Mm,
So when we hear that from our fathers, that hard work and don't give up and be ambitious and continue going, what ends up happening as men is we see the dollars above the emotions. And so as traumas happen in our lives, as divorce occurs, or we get sued, or uh, we get betrayed by our friends and family, we keep our mind on the money. And what starts to happen is the trauma and the emotions start to accumulate, and when the accumulation happens because you have avoided, suppressed, and overridden your emotional needs in order to provide financial success for you and your family, the the emotional traumas start to come out in sideways actions. See if you recognize this in either yourself or other friends that you've had in your life. Men who are high drivers, who work super hard, who are looking to generate wealth, oftentimes end up in strip clubs, watch porn often, drink often. It's a culture. Some of them smoke weed and do cocaine. And when you ask them, why are you doing this? They say, well, this is the only way to address the challenges that I have and suppress
mm,
the frustrations and emotions because I'm a provider. So I love men who are providers. I'm a provider myself, and so are you. But there's a difference between being a healthy provider and an unhealthy provider, otherwise known as a slave.
wow. Could be a mic drop right there. I'm feeling, but I want to ask just two more questions. And you talk a lot about the emotionality, and feeling. And again, from my own journey, and I imagine so many others, we can get so caught up in the day to day and this idea of co-regulating. I'm too busy to feel. I'm too busy to sit with myself. Or, like, as you said, I'm going to turn to the drugs or the alcohol or the coffee, or, just these other things to preoccupy ourselves from actually sitting in the moment and feeling the feelings. So, how does somebody who's caught up in all of that stuff and all of that chaos, how do we take the steps to actually come more into the present moment, to just sit with the feelings? And the training that we've been doing together, I'm noticing that just sitting with those feelings allows us to, first of all, feel them, identify them, and then allows them to really come up so that we can actually be freed from them.
Yeah, so great question. Most guys who are busy creating wealth, success, and providing for others and themselves are often too busy to take the time to figure out how emotions work, to figure out how to deal with trauma, to figure out how to hold space for their loved ones because they're so busy working. And most of us have been taught that feeling your emotions, holding space for other people, connecting with the heart is very complex, costly, and it takes a lot of energy. And I'm here to tell you that that is not true. Most of us have never been taught how to feel our emotions. Look at me and my story. When I was growing up, I was told to be tough. I was told to be ambitious. Tony Robbins told me never give up. No matter what happens, get up again. So in my mind, every time I went through a really hard, challenging space, I told myself, Don't be a little wimp. Get up and keep going. And that very thought was what started to isolate me from me and my families and the people I loved, right? And so
mm,
what I what I was challenged with was, okay, I had a really hard day. Something really bad happened. What do I do? Am I going to just sit here and meditate? I got to do something about it. I don't even know how to meditate. I'm so busy, right? And so
yeah.
there's certain technology we teach in our community called Men of Means, which is very quick, very fast, that allows men to connect with their inner self, understand what is happening inside, take inventory like a businessman, and then address these things so that they don't get stuck and show up in our lives through vices, through addictions, through betrayal, infidelity, which is what happens a lot of the time. And
Mm,
I work with a lot of men around the world. I coach a lot of men, and most of the time, men who cheat on their beloved, they're not guys who are bad people. They're not guys who are trying to trick people in their life. They get in such a deep place of emotional isolation that the
mm,
only way that they oftentimes can release their frustrations, they release their emotions, is to someone outside of the relationship. And this happens because oftentimes as men, we want to protect our women, the one that we're in a relationship with. And so when challenges come up, we are taught to not show our vulnerability to the woman we love, and we start to seek that expression of our problems outside of the relationship, which is very unhealthy and it damages
mm.
both partners. So I would like to share that if you're a man out there, and if you know that you are meant to be successful, and if you also know just as much that you're meant to be successful, but successful in a healthy way, not broken, not damaged by the time you're 40 or 50 years old and a millionaire. For guys like that, there's technology out there that is quick, it's simple, it's easy. Nobody said that healing has to be painful. Healing can also
Mm.
be playful. And that's what we have worked with you, Lee, me, and a group of other men from around the world in this community that we're a part of.
I love that. And the community for anybody tuning in is Men of Means, and we'll drop a link and that sort of thing as well, so that if you want to find out more, you can actually connect with Soleil, and we can get you involved in some of that technology. So last question for this segment, Soleil, is what advice could you share that would maybe go against conventional wisdom or myths out there as it pertains to actually taking that kind of program peak performance in one area and bringing it into every area to create more balance in one's life?
Yes, we always hear people say everything is always related to everything else. It's holistic. Men and women out there, if all you're focused on is your relationship, you're avoiding your finances. If all you're focused on is your money, you're avoiding your emotions. So there needs to be a comprehensive approach to building a healthy human being. And the comprehensive approach that we believe in here, especially at Men of Means, is number one, a connection with your emotions. No avoiding them, no denying them, no suppressing them, really understanding what the hell is happening inside so that you can be guided by them and to create through them. Number two
Mm,
is financial security. How to have a healthy relationship with money because most of us have been raised with money traumas. We oftentimes think that if we have a lot of money, we have no money traumas. You can have money traumas whether you were raised in a wealthy family or in a poor family.
mm,
Number three, for men, sexual integrity. Our sexuality is such an important part of our overall well being. And if your sexuality has a lot of shame associated with it, if you're addicted to porn, like I was addicted to porn, if you're chasing women and trying to fulfill yourself sexually underneath the sheets underground, there's a dysfunction there. And that's something that we want to talk about, work on, address so that it doesn't anchor you down anymore. And then the
mm,
fourth thing is a connection with your spiritual self. How can you really be connected and understand who you are as a spiritual being so that you're guided by truth rather than by what society and commercialism is desiring from you? And this is the way for
Mm,
us to liberate ourselves as men because we've been raised by commercial lifestyle.
so good, Soleil. Thank you so much. I do want to. I know I said that was the last one, but just I want to do one more for the individuals again, kind of with the family and that busyness. Again, we get so programmed into this. I've got to be busy, and I don't really have any time to stop and breathe or meditate or connect with my heart or I'm a spiritual being. Like no, like I'm here to go to work 9 to 5. And so, what would you say for somebody who's really caught up in the kind of the mental machinations of their life and just hey, like this spirituality stuff is like that's for somebody who was born yesterday, and it's not for me, you know.
Yeah, the straight up advice I would give is there's a reason you're watching this video, and this is your opportunity to explore a paradigm that you've never experienced before. And that is the definition of being open minded. Open minded is when we're closing our perception or our mind around things that we don't really understand. Because if you understood something and you said no to it, that's okay. If you understood something and said yes to it, that's okay. But if you don't understand something and you're like, this doesn't work for me, that's the definition of being closed minded. So the first thing I would share with everybody is if you're watching this video, this might be a sign for you to investigate a little bit further some technology that exists here that might really give you a leap. I'll leave you with this. I hired a coach once. She charged me $130,000 a year. And one of the things that she would do, as I was a very fast paced business entrepreneur, and we say busyness because oftentimes it's associated with keeping ourselves busy, right? So, one of the things she taught me is when you learn to slow down, you can take massive leaps. But if you're
Mhm.
constantly trying to address the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, you're a rat in a hamster wheel. So, where can we help you find gaps to slow down, to understand, take inventory of what your assets and liabilities are, so that you can make direct, potent, and uh, decisions that are really focused on purposefulness, not just plugging holes in all parts of your life. And when you learn to do
Mhm.
that, you'll see how your wealth starts to leapfrog and how your fulfillment starts to leapfrog because you're taking back control. Thank you.
So powerful, Soleil. Thank you so much for your time and your wisdom that you shared in this segment.